Okay, this violin, it says it's made in 1748, but it's not. It's a German violin. It's about probably 100 to 120 years old. It is modeled, and the modeling means that it's the shape of the violin, but it's modeled after the maker, Gagliano, and that's spelled Gagliano. I'm fitting a nut. Right now, it does not fit. The angle is not correct, so there's a gap there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use a couple of power tools quickly to get this angle to match that. I'll be getting ready to hand fit this on and glue it on in probably less than a minute because I've done this a billion times. But anyway, this does not currently fit and it's way too big on the sides. So I'm going to trim everything very quickly and you'll just see it in real time. That's probably already correct. Now we're going to confirm it. I leave the machine on. It's just a little bit off. Obviously, some of that space is, I feel it more than I see it. Okay, it's now not moving at all. It's 100%. So now we're going to take a pencil and we're going to trim the excess wood. So I'm going to trim some on here, some on the top, but I'm going to leave it proud because I'm going to hand trim it when I'm there. It now is more of the dimension. I'm going to now trim the backside. Okay, now that's flush with the peg box. Going to trim this and this perfectly flush with the rest. My thumb acts like as a guide, so I don't scratch anything. And I usually do this off the side of the table. I'll go to a finer file. Okay, flip to do the other side. And you just simply blend this in using the flesh of your thumb. Now you're going to use some 1500 grit sandpaper, that's cloth. Now you use a little bit of stain, which I already have in this paper towel. And now there's a perfectly side-fitting nut that you can't feel at all. Both sides. Beautiful thing. So I'm going to trim the top of the nut, and after I trim the top of the nut, I'm going to make it comfortable for every part that the hand could touch it, and then I'm going to put the 4 slots in there for the strings. This finger acts as a stop so that I don't touch the fingerboard. So it's now that high. I'm going to further reduce it with a lighter cutting file. The one thing the camera can't see from that angle is how high everything is, but we'll get there in a minute. Almost done. Put a small chamfer on the edges. And now that's a perfect height. Now we're going to take the leading edge and make a slight curve to go down to the string. This is very important because if this isn't done nicely, the string can break very easily. So I'm rounding over only the back side of the nut. My finger is acting as a guard so I don't hit anything. And I know it seems like I'm going fast, but this is nut number 10,000. Round over the edge. Okay, then sandpaper and round over the edge so it's nice and smooth, so there's no sharp edges when people play it. And then the top side, once again protecting everything on the varnish. The only part that I'm touching that sandpaper to is the nut, not the rest of it. And that is a finished nut that has not been slotted yet. So from my vantage, what I'm doing is I'm calculating, and this is done by eye, but more or less, that's about how far I want the E string in from the side, and that's about how far I want the G string in from the side. And I am taking into account that the G is thicker and the E is thinner. So when I start the slot, I have a lot of choices with the files. I can roll the file anywhere I want, and I'm looking at how high is that string going to be over the fingerboard. And that's almost right. And as soon as I am happy with the slot, I go to a file that's very smooth, and that means it cuts very little, and it makes that slot perfect in every way so that when the string glides on top of that pencil lead, there's no resistance. And then let's do the G. Now the angle for the G is much deeper to the slot because it goes down. The E comes to this peg, the G comes to the peg that's not there right now. And there's my height. That's pretty good. And if you notice, the slot is much wider for the G than what I made it for the E. Okay, then sharpen your pencil again. So typically it's around 16.5 millimeters between strings. So that's where the E string is. There's 16.5. So having done this by eye, you take 16.5 and divide by 3, and the spacing is 5.5. So there's 5.5, and there's 11. So that's the spacing. This is almost every violin that has a normal width. Some old violins, the maker made the nut spacing narrower. Some are very wide. But at Ronald Sachs, we typically make this standard because then when you play one violin to the next, it always feels the same. Here on the top, and I'm just saying, does that look spaced evenly, evenly? I can see that I'm going to move the slot of the A a little bit closer and these two look okay to me, but this is too wide and that's a little narrower. So by just moving the A over a little bit, it should be perfect. A well-spaced nut is one of the most important parts of playing a violin. If the strings are too close, they're hard to play. If they're too wide, it's hard to play. So getting this just right is really only done by eye. And that looks like to be a correctly spaced nut.